I will tell you that gossip always comes camouflaged as concern in your organization. People will say, I don't know if you heard, but, or hey, I'm worried about. They're not concerned. They just want to gossip. You have person A that has an issue or a challenge or a problem with person B. Rarely do they go directly to person B. They go to person C. The people on the front lines, sometimes all they need to be worried about is their job. Sometimes all they need to be worried about is showing up, doing their job, and doing it at a high level. We've all heard communication permits progress. That's a fallacy. Communication doesn't permit progress. It's reliable communication that permits progress. Gossip. It happens at work. One tiny spark of did you hear what happened could lead to a major wildfire of efficiencies, effectiveness, less productivity, minimal results, and a horrible culture. There are ways that you can proactively get ahead of and stop gossip. I will tell you that gossip always comes camouflaged as concern in your organization. People will say, I don't know if you heard, but, or hey, I'm worried about. They're not concerned. They just want to gossip. Let's talk about ways we can stop it. I'm Chad Carden, founder of the Carden Group, and for the past 25 years, I have helped companies across the globe minimize gossip. We'll talk about that, but minimize gossip. We're not going to stop it, but how do we minimize it? There are ways that you can remove from a very reactive environment to gossip to being proactive. Think about it this way. Think about becoming a fire preventer versus a fire fighter. You're really good at putting out fires when gossip comes to shut down the noise. How can we fire prevent them? How can we prevent the gossip before it even starts? Here's what's interesting. It's actually costing you more than you realize. Gossip has true impact on your bottom line. Here's some statistics that the team found out, which is just some of them are really startling. According to a study of Harvard Business, so this is Harvard Business, this isn't me pulling it off the shelf, 85% of employees deal with workplace conflict, and most of it stems from miscommunication, confusion, and you guessed it, gossip. 85% gossip plays a role in creating an environment that's not conducive to driving results. U.S. businesses lose an estimated $37 billion annually due to employee misunderstandings, including poor communication. And poor communication is another word for gossip. Companies with 100 employees spend an average of 17 hours a week, 17 hours. So every 100 employees, 17 hours a week, clarifying miscommunication. That translates into over $500,000 annually in lost productivity. $500,000 annually. Think about this. 69% of managers say that they're uncomfortable communicating with employees. That's a whole nother video. But if I don't know how to communicate, guess what I'm going to mask it with? I'm going to mask it with things that just don't add value, which will lead to gossip. When people are uninformed, gossip does show up. And the last one here, interesting, 38%, almost 40% of employees say that they would consider leaving their job due to a toxic work culture, even if they were otherwise satisfied with their role. So I'm completely satisfied with my role. 4 out of 10 are thinking about leaving if gossip shows up in the work culture. Again, it's costing you more than what you realize. Let's talk about strategies and ways to minimize the gossip. Not stop it, minimize it. Number one, we have to begin to eliminate triangular communication. Triangular communication is an interesting concept that shows up in every organization, including mine. I'm not immune to this, all right? So I'm not trying to be mightier than thou or holier than thou or stand up on my soapbox and talk about this. These are things that I'm intentionally tuned into all the time as well. Triangular communication is with, if you look at, you have a kind of a triad here. You have person A that has an issue or a challenge or a problem with person B. Rarely do they go directly to person B. They go to person C. And they dump on person C on all the issues, challenges, frustrations, things that they have going on with person B. And here's what they typically tell person C. Listen, I appreciate you letting me vent. Just keep this in the vault, just between us. Rarely, somehow, I'm not indicting person C, but somehow it ultimately gets back to person B. And instead of person B going to person A, they go back to person C and dump on all the challenges, frustrations, and things that they have with person A. And when you have this triangular communication going on, it allows for misunderstandings. It allows for factual things to potentially get out of fact. It allows for gossip. It allows to take small, maybe issues or challenges, turn into big issues or challenges. It creates what Adam Carroll talks about what he talks about is pole vaulting over mouse turds. We take these things that are little things in the organization, but because we have this triangle communication, they turn into big things. And now we spend all of our time cleaning that up. Well, if you can minimize, again, we're probably not going to remove it, if you can help minimize or reduce triangle communication, it saves tremendous time, energy, effort, and real dollars, according to those statistics, on the cleanup on the back end. So thinking about this, so how do you minimize triangular communication? Number one is you have to create comfort with person A and B approaching each other, which means it has to be a two-way street. Person A has to approach person B in a professional, authentic, sincere, and positive manner. They can't come at them heated. They can't come at them with indictments. They can't come at them with things that may or may not be reality. They have to come at them with the facts and come at them with an attitude of, I just want to present it, but my ultimate goal is to solve it. Person B has to have an attitude of absorption. They have to be willing to absorb it, take it in. They might not agree. We might agree to disagree, but ultimately there has to be that comfort that I can approach and that the person I'm approaching is going to be willing to hear me out, willing to have a conversation, willing to absorb it and make changes if they so deem necessary. But it's about putting it in the arena, which I'll dive into in just a little bit more what I mean by that. That really has to take place. So we have to encourage that confidence, competence, and comfort of people approaching each other and eliminating person C. So when it comes to triangular communication, think about your organization and think about what you can do to create a stronger foundation around that comfort of people authentically, sincerely, and confidently being able to approach. Probably more importantly, is setting the person up that is getting approached to absorb it and receive it in a productive manner. Ultimately, we want to what we call assume positive intent. I always want to come at it with a positive intent, and we always want to approach it with leaving the relationship and the situation encouraged and moving forward in a positive direction, not discouraged and taking 2 or 3 steps back. That's triangular communication. Here's another thing to think about when minimizing gossip. We talk about kind of floodlight communication and floodlight information. Ultimately, a lot of times, especially in large organizations, there is a ton of information that flows through the organization. There's a ton of information that flows through small organizations, right? How can we, from a floodlight standpoint, minimize the noise, minimize the perceptions, and minimize the gossip by creating clarity, by being transparent, by showing what's reality, but not always sugarcoating things. When we talk about floodlight communication, there's really 4 areas to think about. One is, what are we communicating? The why behind that communication, the impact, positive or negative, the impact that means, and what everybody's role is to make sure that those things that we're communicating come to fruition or those things actually get implemented. Let me go back to the impact. It's important that as we're communicating things from a floodlight standpoint, that we just don't talk about some of the good things. We call them tailwinds. It's not just about the tailwinds. It's what are some of the headwinds? What are some of the roadblocks? What are some of the challenges we're going to face when we're communicating? We want to what we call mentally connect the dots for our people. We want to make sure that our people truly understand, because if they don't understand, if the dots aren't connected, they will make up their own interpretations. And many times those interpretations are not real. And then you have water cooler talk, you have smoke break talk, you have all this talk happening, triangular communication. You have all these things happening that are not real that lead to more gossip. And remember, one spark of gossip can lead to a wildfire of inefficiencies and a work product that's not ideal to drive the results you want to drive. We're working with an organization right now on an internal strategic plan. And one of the things about this organization is they are really working on their culture. They're really working on changing the past. It's not about kind of the past versus the future. It's just more about kind of there's an opportunity right now to reset, to refocus, to reimagine what's happening. And one of the things that we're truly intentional about is the communication with their internal team and understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it, the impact, what the ask is from them, what are the headwinds, what are the tailwinds, and what they're finding by going through this journey is that clarity and that alignment is truly minimizing the noise. It's minimizing the gossip. It's minimizing the looking in the rear view and maybe they put their hand on the stove and got it burnt, so they don't want to do that again. It's minimizing those types of concepts because they're being more proactive. They're taking the pendulum from here to here. They're minimizing. They're being fire preventers, not just fighting fires. So think about floodlight within your organization or even within your team. How can you communicate in ways that connect the dots and minimize the opportunity for me, if I'm on your team or in your audience, for me to create my own thoughts or my own perceptions or my own stories or my own ideas that are probably not even reality on what it is we're trying to accomplish. That's the floodlight. Our organization today is going through massive change. And we have been sort of in a roller coaster ride the past 18 months with a lot of our clients, a lot of our initiatives, and where it is that we're going. It is imperative that I stay consciously aware of our floodlight communication because there is a lot of confusion out there. Perfect example is, we're looking at continuously expanding and growing our team. Well, we launched this entirely new thing and found about 65 people that could join our team when we had a huge multi-million-dollar contract on the table. And as soon as we started that campaign, that contract, we walked away from it. We didn't lose it. We walked away from it because it just wasn't the right fit for us. So now we have 65 people on our bench or waiting kind of in our pipeline to potentially fill some of those things that would be on that project. So what did we do? Well, we whittled it down to like 14, right? And so we have 14 people out there right now that are looking to join some of our projects, some of our initiatives, and some of them want to join our organization full time. It's important that I just continuously put those things on the table and I'm open and honest with them. We have a ton of projects happening right now. Our current team is taking care of those, but we also have a ton in the pipeline that are what I call BOFU or bottom of funnel, that if one of those things falls, we're gonna need that bench of people. That's an example of floodlight communication. It's my role to make sure that I'm not leaving those people just hanging. It's about making sure that I am helping them connect the dots and move forward. That's imperative. I don't know what your messages are or what are some of those hanging chads in your organization, but how can you, again, prevent those or at least put out those fires so there's not all these different scenarios of what might be happening, but reality shows up and everybody's singing from the same sheet of music. But we practice arena-based conversations all the time. We challenge our clients, we challenge our team, we challenge ourselves. We always talk about putting it in the arena, putting it in the arena. And I pride myself on creating team members that are comfortable, confident, and competent, putting those things in the arena. Just the other day, I had to have an arena-based conversations with one of our advisors that have been with us for a year. I highly respect our veteran advisors and their feedback because the people working on our clients truly are interdependent. Meaning if one person, some of our projects and our initiatives are multi-million-dollar initiatives, and if one person messes it up, it could potentially impact 5, 10, 15 people that are working on that project, which is real dollars, which fuels car payments and mortgages and vacations and things that they really think are important in their life. So we always talk about these arena-based conversations. Recently, we had a new advisor that he'd been with us for about a year, and he was doing some really, really good things. However, he just wasn't showing up in a way that represented our brand or showing up in a way that our senior advisors or our tenured advisors really appreciated. They actually thought he could hurt the client or actually potentially cause the client to go in another direction. It was immediate. I appreciated that they came to me with that. They didn't hold that. That wasn't a blind spot for me. They shared that. They put that in the arena, and I immediately put that in the arena and removed that person, not just from that project, but from our organization, because it just wasn't the right fit. Those decisions, they're not always easy. But the arena, again, we might not like it, we might not agree with it, but those decisions are necessary if you want to remove gossip, remove frustration, and remove confusion. It helps set your people up for a higher probability of success. If you need help with communication strategies and how to set your organization up for a higher probability of success, check out our design leader. It talks about why, how, and when to communicate messages that will set you up for a higher probability of future success and driving better results. I'll put the link below. Let me dive into the final anchor point here is the spotlight. So when I talk about spotlight communication, when I talk about really getting into the details, it's more about what we call Johari's window, which this is out there. This is not ours. We've taken it. You can look this up on the internet. It's two psychologists by the name of Joe and Harry came up with this thing, and they talked about the dynamics of working relationships, or just the dynamics of relationships when it comes to spotlight communication that helps minimize the gossip. This, if you get this right, you will dramatically reduce the gossip from a spotlight perspective. Let me walk you through Johari's window. So there's really 4 quadrants, if you will. The first quadrant is what they deemed the arena. And the arena, you heard me say that earlier in this video, like put it in the arena. The arena is what's known to be true. You know it, I know it. We might not like it, we might not agree with it, but at least we know it. It's reality. I'm not gonna take some concept and mold it or shape it to make it make sense to me. It's reality, it's on the table. It's called reliable communication that permits progress. We've all heard communication permits progress. That's a fallacy. Communication doesn't permit progress. It's reliable communication that permits progress. I could communicate the wrong things all day long. I could go to the doctor, and if my elbow's hurting and I tell him or her my knee's hurting, they're going to diagnose or provide a wrong solution. It's not communication. It's reliable communication that permits progress and put things in the arena. It's known. We might not agree it. We might not like it. We know it. That helps minimize the thought process, the noise, all the different ideas that could come out, and minimizes the gossip. The second thing, which is interesting, is blind spots. Blind spots are things that you can see in me and I can't see in myself. I'm kind of oblivious. We always say it's hard to read the bottle. It's hard to read the label when you're inside your own bottle, right? And so sometimes I just don't see them because I might be unconscious to them because I'm with myself 24/7, right? These blind spots, if I'm not open to these blind spots, and I'm not open to that feedback, it could create gossip. It could create frustration. When I leave the room, people are going to talk about me. You see, he did that again. You see, here he goes. You see that? That's what frustrates me. It's going to lead to that triangular communication. It's not allowing authentically for somebody to share those things and at least have conversations with me about those things because I might be not open to them and I'm just not aware of them. So those blind spots, and we all have blind spots. When we leave, people talk about us. We talk about other people. People talk about us. It's just an acceptance thing. The next quadrant or bucket is what they call facades. Facades are things that I know to be true, but I do everything I can to make sure nobody else knows it. And as leaders, this is one of the biggest stressors that we deal with. This is weight on our shoulders because in front of the curtain, we got to put a smile on with our team, right? With our clients, with our customers, with our marketplace. Yep, everything's fine. Behind the curtain, we got to say, how are we going to do this? Like, how the hell are we going to make this happen? How can we do it? We don't have the resources. And so we live with it. So facades are about transparency. It's about being comfortable enough to help your team understand what the true dynamics are. And maybe you don't have all the answers, but confident enough to know that you can work through it. So how can we move those facades? And I'll talk about how we grow the arena in just a minute. And the last quadrant, or the last bucket, is what they call unknowns. Those are things that you don't know to be true, I don't know to be true, because life continues to unfold, and organically those things will present themselves as they go. When Joe and Harry did this study, they realized that the best working relationships, the best spotlight communication happens when the arena is the biggest, which means it's out there, reliable communication, which means we have to work hard to minimize blind spots and minimize facades. How do we do that? Let's walk through that. Well, blind spots, it's going back to that triangular communication. It's about creating comfort, confidence, and competence for people to approach each other. If there's something that my team doesn't appreciate about me, I would hope that I would be open to them approaching me and having those conversations. I would hope that we could talk about those conversations. We might disagree, but at least it's in the arena, right? And so being open to blind spots. When I approach somebody about their blind spots, how do I position it in a way that leaves them encouraged, not discouraged? I'm not here to indict or fault anybody. It's just, how do I feel comfortable approaching somebody in a way that hopefully helps them minimize or realize? And that's the thing, like, most people will change their blind spots, but they just don't realize their blind spots until somebody approaches them and talks to them about it. The other bucket, facades, we have to be comfortable with transparency, especially in our spotlight communication. We have to be comfortable enough to communicate reality and help our people understand what the true situation is. We also have to be confident enough that there's a game plan to move. If it's a bad situation, we have to be okay. But a lot of times we don't present that because it's these facades. The interesting thing is a lot of times our people already know. The elephant's already in the room. And so sometimes our blind spots and our facades are the exact same thing. So how can you minimize those blind spots, minimize those facades, and grow that arena? That unknown bucket is something that we can't control. It just organically unfolds as we go. But growing that arena creates reliable communication. It creates informed team members. It reduces gossip and thought process because it truly helps connect all the dots as we go. The last caveat I will say is that gossip will always be part of your organization. You should just accept it. If you're the leader, people are going to talk about you. Right? If you're the owner of an organization, people are going to talk about you. It just happens. So we're not going to completely eliminate it, but how do we minimize it? How do we become that fire preventer using the removal of triangular communication, thinking about our floodlight communication, thinking about our spotlight communication in Johari's window? How can we move the pendulum from here to minimize it? That creates more productivity, more efficiency, better results, and a better engaged workforce. So number one is just accept it. Number two is that I talk about transparency, but I also want to highlight that you don't need to share everything. Not everybody needs to know everything. Number one, it creates noise. You have people that are worried about things they shouldn't even be worried about. Right? And so you handle those big issues, but sometimes the people on the front lines, sometimes all they need to be worried about is their job. Sometimes all they need to be worried about is showing up, doing their job, and doing it at a high level. That's the only thing. They don't need to be worried about all these other plates that you might be spinning as you move up the organization. It's almost like a reverse triangle. If you think about it, the leader at the top has a lot to worry about. Maybe middle management has a lot to worry about, but they shouldn't be worried about as much as the top leaders. And then the front lines, they just need to be worried about their role and their specific. But when you look at organizations, those lines expand. And you have people on the front lines worried about a P&L, or people on the front lines worried about profit, or people on the front lines worried about things that they shouldn't be worried about ultimately, because they should be worried and focused on their job. So what's something you can do? What's something you can do to help minimize or reduce gossip and impact efficiencies, impact results, impact bottom line? What's that one thing? Can you think about how you can remove triangular communication? Can you think about your floodlight? Can you think about your spotlight? Whatever that is, take action, because it is truly costing you more than you realize. Do something, do it today, take gossip away, and see better results. If you want to go deeper with your communication and understand how to better communicate with your people, check out my next video on communication styles. I will, in 20 minutes, improve your communication by 88%. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.